This is Jasper.
Hello, this is Oscar.
Yeah, hey. So the introduction. I'm Oscar. I run Songstats, which is a music data analytics platform. We collect data from Spotify, Apple Music, Beatport, SoundCloud, YouTube, Instagram. There's like 15 data sources that we collect data on. The Songstats app presents that data in like a way that's quite easily consumable. So we want to make it easy for artists to, and also record labels, to understand the data that they're seeing and act on it. So it's like almost like actionable insights. And yeah, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper also into what can help an artist to achieve these goals and to like kind of make more out of the achievements that they're seeing on those platforms.
Yeah, and I'm here representing WARM, which is acronym for World Airplay Radio Monitor. And as the name says, we are basically a global radio monitoring service. We currently have the biggest coverage in the world of all the services. Our primary goal is to create transparency about global radio for artists, labels, publishers, managers, anyone who is actually interested in understanding their radio plays globally. And so we monitor not only big commercial radios, but also everything in niche, college, and community radios, everything in between. And we keep on going for as much coverage as possible, monitoring the songs that the clients are actively wanting to monitor, basically. So one side of our business is, of course, to provide market intelligence in real time. But of course, you will also get the evidence to support potential royalty claims on publishing or neighboring rights. And so actually the format of today was very open. Me and Oscar talked about trying to do something that was a little bit more intimate. And I can see that it is quite intimate today. So if you guys wouldn't mind, it would be nice if you would come a little bit closer up here, and then maybe we could talk a little bit more also from your personal perspective. So we're not sitting here spending time talking about one side and then you guys would be more interested in talking about something else. So if you're down with that, then please join us up here and we can do it a little bit more intimate. Yeah, also.
That's awesome, yeah.
Also cool.
I mean, just really quick, like who here uses Songstats and WARM? Do you use Songstats? Do you use WARM as well, or no?
I don't yet, but it sounds very interesting to me.
Okay, cool.
I tried once, well.
Okay.
And I prefer MPN.
And you what?
MPN I prefer.
NPN, you know?
Yeah, but MPN is okay. Yeah, I understand your point. Maybe Marcus, you could explain a little bit about MPN in Germany.
Marcus, I run Flaxifab, the radio station here in Berlin, and actually we use NPM as part of like our sources, like where to get like new released music.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's louder, but anyway. But I think the service that Warm offers is a bit different, because actually what they provide for you as like an artist, a label, a publishing company, is that they monitor stations around the world that play your song and what royalties you can make from it.
MPN is short for Music Promotion Network. So it's basically a promotion service.
Yeah, but like, for example, I tried your service once to track one track,
Yeah.
and with MPN I had more, I could see more radios than you were actually.
Okay. No, it's a fair point. I'm happy to investigate that. Yeah, I don't know. I would love to look into.
I wanted to compare.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I stay with what I had.
Of course, makes sense. But then you will also.
It's like different, and you have more coverage. I mean, like more.
Yes, I mean MPN is obviously more German oriented.
I work for France.
Yeah. So you have a MPN in France as well.
But I use that for France, and it's super.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Good to know. We have to investigate more.
So what is it that you work on with these tracks actually? Why do you need radio data? Why is that important to you?
Because I'm a promoter
Okay. Promoter for what?
for radio.
Radio,
radio
promoter.
plugger. Okay.
So
Interesting.
do you work internationally or specifically in?
All the French countries, speaking countries.
Gotcha. So does that include Quebec, for example?
It could include Quebec sometimes, but it's mostly Belgium, Switzerland, and France.
Okay. Cool. And in France, you have there is about a limitation, so you have to do 50% French native-speaking music, or
I don't remember how much it is, like the percentage, but yeah.
40.
it's-
40. Okay, okay. Is that similar in Germany as well? Do you have rules about that? No.
There was a big discussion about it, but all the radio stations complained if they would have to play German music, they would
Only play Schlager.
close the station.
Okay, interesting. And so, do you primarily work for major labels or independents or both, or in any specific genres?
I work mostly for 3 labels, and after for all the clients, mostly independent. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Good to know.
Okay. No, that's all
it's
good.
totally fine. You know, so cool.
I think the main question here, I guess, lies within like, okay, there's a lot of different data needs. Like you're a radio plugger, right, or promoter. You're an artist.
Well, I am an artist. I do have 2 labels, and I work at a distributor.
Okay, so a whole bandwidth of
Different caps.
yeah. So that's really interesting because then it suddenly opens like a lot of different possibilities, right? Like let's say artist, label, distributor, radio promoter, right? All of which kind of want to access data and actually use it a little bit in a different light, right? So there's different approaches a little bit between what Songsets is doing and what Warm is doing. I can speak a little bit about with Songsets, we're primarily like mobile. And we like to be mobile because it's more targeted towards artists and to labels. So then you have almost like a notification system in your pocket, right? You receive the push notification and you can act on it. For someone who's working on it more professionally, like a distributor or a plugger, you work on individual tracks because there's a lot of catalog, and then you would use a desktop dashboard, which both Warm has and Songsets as well. Now, for reporting and for all of this, it's really good. Would you be, for example, interested in having like real-time notifications every time one of your stations is playing the song that you're interested in?
If it's big radios, yes, of course. But if it's like for small radios, not like all the time because there is too much in, then I will
Right.
refuse it.
Yeah, so it's about certain thresholds, perhaps.
And how do you identify the different thresholds? Because there's different metrics, right? So there's an average like listenings that like a station has, but there's also like social followings. Like what are you mostly, or like of course also like a reputation of a station, right?
Yeah, I would say like the amount of people that are listening to the radio firstly is like the biggest for me, I guess.
Do you?
Reputation is also like something, it's a food.
What's important for you in France as an electronic music station? Nova?
No, Nova it's good, but like I would say Radio G is better for electronic music, way better. Yeah, the thing is like, yeah, Radio G for electronic music, I would say is like the top one.
How's it called?
Energy.
FG.
Yeah.
Energy, yeah.
Energy is also good, but Energy is not specialized in electronic music, so
No,
Energy
okay.
is like for electronic music. But Energy is like, yeah, it's like in the top 10.
Is FG, is that the national?
What?
Is it the national radio station?
Yeah, it's also in Belgium.
Alright.
Yeah, it's like it's Sunshine Live kind of.
Ah, okay, I
Yeah.
understand. So rather like commercial electronics, not very underground.
No, they have like they have like the big Radio G, which is like commercial kind of, and then they have like other smaller radio on the same, and then you have some that are underground and some that are very like EDM.
Because Sunshine Live is something that Germany will listen to.
Yeah, Radio G is actually like quite. But that is only for electronic. After like I would say like for example a big radio, it could be like, but not for electronic. Like Chérie FM is really big. Energy is like amazingly big too. like stuff like that. But for to plug something in energy,
Okay, I will go home and
So-
investigate. Like,
No, that's all good. So what's interesting, for example, with Radio Energy in Germany, is that we at Songsters, we actually calculate the dance charts. So every Saturday they publish their dance charts. They used to use the global dance charts, I think, from like Holland. There was like putting them out every month, every week, I think. But they really wanted to have their own proprietary like kind of like charting. So we are actually working with them, and they wanted to. We essentially like created almost a sort of like algorithm for them to say like, okay, how much is the weight of Spotify playing into account? How much does Beatport play into account? How much does, and they're electronic, right? So they wanted the electronic music sources, and then we kind of set weights to the different platforms. And of course, Spotify makes tracks a little bit more what's quote unquote radio. But then as an electronic station, you also want to have representation on the electronic stores, 1001 track list, which is DJ support, etc. And that's working well, and that's basically now their weekly thing that they update every Saturday, and that's at least in Germany it's used well across Germany for their stations, which is pretty interesting. That essentially they now look at other platforms to see how music is performing to then adjust their charts based on that, right? So.
cool. Can you tell us a little bit about what is maybe one of your challenges as a radio promoter? Like, what would you like in terms of development in this space? Or do you have everything you need?
no. Like actually, there is like something. There is something that I would need, is because I can only see the charts for France for like the first 100 stuff, and I cannot see. I don't find like, for example, dance charts for France. I only like regular charts, and I would like to go deeper in detail, because when I work for like electronic music, for sure that will never be in the first 100 charts of the entire country, like generally, but maybe in the dance charts, yes, and I cannot find that.
Yeah. So you would actually prefer like genre-based charts from radio, for example. So let's say there was a electronic radio chart for Europe
Yeah,
or something, or Benelux or whatever.
yeah, for France.
Yeah, okay. But in MPN, do you only look for charts, or do you also use can work with specific tracks, for example, or EPs?
Because it's Germany, I don't have access to the French charts, only the German charts, but I have access to all the things.
Yeah, but
So it's what I track.
yeah, but my point is just you do not necessarily track the airplays. You okay? I misunderstood.
I do like track by track. All the tracks I plug, then I look like the speeds of the track.
Yeah.
Each radio, etc.
Gotcha. Okay, gotcha.
But I would like to have more data actually.
More charts.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting because we actually talked a lot about this, and there is two ways. One way is to genre tag the music then you want to consider for the charts. If you wanted to do like an electronic chart for Europe, for example, and the other one is of course to genre tag the radios and then use whatever's being played there to produce the charts. And it's a little bit you kind of have to select one road or the other. And does that make sense?
No, I didn't get it.
Okay. So if you want to produce, let's say, an electronic chart for Europe, you would have to either go for tagging, like genre tagging. What is an electronic radio in Europe, right? So you could take Sunshine Live and what was it called?
Radio G.
FJ.
FJ.
And you can take, various channels in this, and you can compile charts based on these radios, right? Or you could genre tag the songs and say all songs that has been played electronic across all channels will produce the charts. Do you see my point? So there's like, you have to kind of like, so the provider or whoever should build the charts would need to find out if they want to select what is an electronic radio in this market, or if they want to use the tags, the genre tags on all the music. So that's like, so there are ways to do this, but for example, with genre tagging music, it's problematic because it's usually done by distributors, right? Or the labels behind the distributors. Or for example, with Beatport, of course, they are pretty strict with how they genre.
I mean, we receive a lot of genre information actually. Like we're tagging tracks internally with genres. Usually it's coming from the DSPs for us. So Spotify has crazy genres. They have like 5,000 different genres. There's like German tech house, and it literally says German tech house. Then there's like, I don't know, like
acid rock, jazz.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like this, like weird genres. But they only use them internally. Like you don't really see that. But they use that for the algorithm to create like a cluster of like what belongs together and what is being played together a lot. Now, then there's Apple Music, for example, and they tag very broadly. So they would just say it's dance. Or it's, sometimes they do a subgenre like house within dance, but pretty much based on that, like any track that is considered dance in in Apple, that would already be like part of like a dance chart. You could consider that probably as a dance track.
Yeah, my point was just when it's radio, if you
welcome.
Yeah, perfect.
Welcome to our intimate workshop, talking about music data and radio. A little introduction is needed if you want to take a seat here. Who are you, and are you an artist, or what are your needs?
Working for a music distributor.
Distributor, all right. Oh, you produce music, okay. Do you use either Songstats or Warm?
Songstats.
You use Songstats? Okay. Would you consider using a radio monitoring solution? Okay.
We've been in discussions with Warm before.
Okay. What is the distributor?
Dictis.
Okay. It must be some time ago.
Yeah, I think last year.
But was it because you wanted to have like an integration or something so you can provide the analytics in your own dashboard for the clients, or do you remember what the conversation was?
I think we were in early discussions, just getting to know each other.
Okay.
Not really in depth, I guess.
Okay. Apparently we did not succeed on that one either.
Okay, I mean, so you do use Songstats. Let's say there was, maybe let's talk a little bit about the value of radio data, because clearly for you it's very valuable because it's your job, and clients are paying you so that it actually reaches the radio. We have someone from a radio station actually who is also in the crowd, and then of course for a distributor it might be interesting to see like, is this actually getting played, and then of course like from, oh wow.
Yeah, I thought we would change the picture.
Okay. So I would say like for an artist, for example, to release music, being played on radio is almost like the last step in a long cycle now. It mostly starts nowadays with like TikTok or YouTube or SoundCloud or Instagram, where a track actually like is getting picked up first. Now the labels, I actually had a meeting with Universal's head of A&R like yesterday. They are really interested in seeing this data and seeing like what is being like used as like third-party content or is not signed yet to a major label that is actually getting streamed a lot, because they are very interested in picking up trends, right? So they are almost like the second part in the chain, which is usually an A&R or then of course the streaming services. And radio is like what feels like now the third part in this chain. They are not as much of a trendsetter anymore. They are more of the one that then commercializes a song, right? That might be a little bit different when a station is playing a lot of DJ mixes, because of course DJs are also sort of influencers nowadays. But to get a song on rotation on radio usually means that it's already successful, maybe primarily on socials first, then on streaming services, and then it enters radio. Now, radio can be extremely valuable. So, of course, as an artist, you make money of it, or you should. That's also why reporting and monitoring is super important, because if there's better monitoring, that means if you are a member of the GEMA in Germany or other collective societies, essentially, they will make sure that you get paid what you're owed for your song being performed publicly, right? There's really big examples, especially in the US, with SiriusXM, right? they pay so well per stream because they have such a large audience. If you get spun there one time, it's around $40. So not so many artists realize this. This is getting shared actually around 50-50 between label and artist. But there's a lot of unclaimed royalties sitting there that if you actually claim them, and that usually goes through a platform called Sound Exchange, you can actually like sometimes dig up tens of thousands of dollars. Because like in the last like 3 or 4 years, if you had a couple of tracks on rotation, you can make a lot of royalties there that you might have missed, right? So for these purposes, it's actually really great to use monitoring solutions to also dig up royalties, right, as an artist. Maybe even potentially as a label or distributor as well. It depends. But as a label, you have the mechanical rights, so especially like at least with SiriusXM, you will be able to claim 50%, which is significant as well, especially if you can get one of these tracks on there, which again comes back to radio plugging. If you can get on rotation on such stations, and for example with Sirius, there's a couple like Diplo's Revolution and a couple, and there's actually DJs, for example, that curate shows there regularly. So it's really smart to try plug them the tracks, get them to spin them a couple of times, because each spin actually means money for you. It's not just like, okay, it's a little bit of promotion, but actually you get money back, right? Like, so the plugging effort goes full circle. You pay maybe for someone to plug it or you pitch it, and then it goes all the way back around, right?
Yeah, and some insights to Sirius, just found them here. So the reason why Sirius pays so well and it's such an important radio station with multiple channels is because in the US, you know, people drive a lot of cars, and usually they would, when they buy a new car, it would have Sirius XM installed, and then people would get used to this for the first month or two or whatever it is, and then they will start paying a subscription fee. And in the US, there, I don't know if there's 200 million cars or more, but probably like a very high percentage of these cars will have Sirius inside it, so people will use it on a daily basis basically, and find their preferred channel, whether it's Bob Dylan's Sirius channel or Diplo. So yeah, it's quite interesting. The two new guys, do you have any challenges with radio in particular, or is there anything that you would want to in a perfect world that could help you in your work?
Not for the moment, I guess. Like most of the labels we work with as a distributor,
Digital.
they're really focused on underground electronic music, so they're barely getting played on commercial radio stations.
Exactly. And I think also that's quite interesting, because obviously the size of the radio and whether it's commercial or not in general has a big importance. But as we also discussed in a previous panel, is that there are actually a lot of value, especially with emerging artists or, you know, upcoming labels, even in electronic music, to find airplays on even smaller stations that is probably more niche. Because one of the key takeaways from the other panel is that you build achievements, right? So when you are going for the DSPs and through your distributor, and you need to build a package or EPK or whatever, you need to have some kind of achievements, or at least, you know, the more you have, the better it is. The same goes when you want to approach a booking agency or another record label or whatever it is. So, I mean, I see a lot of artists who wants to be played on BBC One, which is nice, but you know, you are competing with the majors and their sub-labels in electronic music and everyone else. So there might be smaller radios where you can build something, so you have some achievements you can use then go and push it to BBC One, for example. And then I see a lot of labels in this segment and artists as well who is focusing on, for example, their specific like a specific station in their home market or something that they know is important. Whereas the reason why we wanted to have Warm is because it's global. So if your song is played on a specific radio in Japan or Canada or Brazil or whatever in a niche, you will be able to see that, and then obviously you can contact the radio, and you can go to LinkedIn and find who is the host here, who is the curators, who is the programmers, contact them directly. Another thing that I think a lot of people do not know with Warm is that you can also track other people's artists or other people's music. So if you are releasing a tech house track and you're like, well, it's probably not going to be played on radio, you can monitor a much bigger tech house track and see what radios plays it. And then, of course, you have a list you can approach, whether you have a professional PR company or your label, or you're doing it yourself. So in that way, there are some possibilities to do something, even though it's not necessarily the biggest commercial radios.
Yeah, I would say that I think what I see a lot happening is that both artists, labels, distributors, they get stuck on the platforms that they're already successful on. That's happening all the time. Like, let's say you see success early on Beatport because you're getting into hype charts, and then that's all you look at. You always look at the hype charts. Next year, you're still looking at the hype charts. Next year, you're still looking at the hype charts. But you get stuck there, right? Because you're on one platform and like, okay, that's cool. Now you maybe monitor Spotify closely, and then you track your monthly listeners, you track your streams, and that's cool, right? Now, you might completely miss that like a release of yours was actually featured on Amazon Music. It's actually doing well there, but you don't know about it. And likewise, it could be that one of your tracks is doing extremely well on the radio somewhere, like some student radio channels somewhere in South Germany. You have no clue that that's happening right now. You might see some more streams out of the sudden on Spotify, but you can't like pinpoint why this is happening, right? But it might be becoming a big hit out of the sudden, right? So it's a lot of like what we are trying to do, of course, is surface like trends and also point out like, hey, actually you are doing well. Suddenly there is this like editorial playlist on YouTube that it has your track inside, right? Or then suddenly there are a bunch of stations that are suddenly picking up your music, right? So it's a little bit about kind of like diversifying, not just to focus on these two DSPs that you always put all the traction on, but instead also focus on the other ones, because the other ones oftentimes have a way bigger way of like actually entering. Amazon, for instance, pays 4 times better than Spotify does. If you do well there, that's great. If they feature you, that's cool. So then maybe if they feature you, also link to them one time, because everyone always just links to Spotify, right? Maybe link to Amazon, get people to stream there. Maybe they do, who knows? Or do like a smart link and do it this way, right? And push it. The same thing, I guess, with radio. It's just like for a lot of people, it's just not really on the screen a lot of times.
And
Exactly.
actually, in this sense, take an example with the college radios in the States, for example. Some of these, let's say there's a college radio in, I don't know, Wisconsin or New York or something, and they can easily have a broadcast to an audience that are, similar to a medium-sized city in Denmark. And so it's also about comparisons. And here you, instead of getting a random city in Denmark, you get a very specific demographic group. You get all people in the same age group, more or less, and you get they probably like the same football team, and they drink the same beers, and they like the same food and stuff. So you can get a lot of more information. You get a lot of information even from niches and from something that appears to be smaller. But this is also where it's possibly easier to interact with, for example, the curators and the gatekeepers, something that is obviously difficult on DSPs. But with radio, you actually have a person selecting the music, and if it's a small radio, it's a college radio or specific niche or genre, there is a big chance that you have much better possibility of getting in contact with the people working there.
I guess my question for all of you is like, have you ever plugged a radio? Except for you. Have you?
Sure, I was working for Universal.
You did plug a lot. Okay.
Yeah, you done. Take your turn.
Yeah, I got some tracks on radio, yeah, like through.
But you plug them yourself, or you use the plugging service, or?
I will usually have like contacts on DJs who play the shows. For instance, like Radio UK, they now went like on FM, so I know like DJs. I have contacts with friends.
So you pitched to the DJs, and the DJs played it, and through them it ended up on radio.
Yes.
Interesting. And how did you know that it ended up on radio?
I mean, they would shout about it, right? They would like play their shows and they could tell you about something, yeah, exactly. But like so try, I don't know, like this traditional way, I'm not sure actually. I don't know. I never like done it that way.
So it's like you know what information you get basically. Like you don't know necessarily if it's further.
What do you mean, or if it's getting played like?
Yeah, I mean, like if a guy you know plays it on a radio and he tells you, obviously you will know it.
Yeah.
But you are not using like something to control it, so to say. So.
No.
Yeah, it's very interesting actually. So I can speak for Songstats right now. We've been kind of like looking at what we call playlist journeys. So let's say that there's some influential playlists. If you land on those playlists, other playlists will pick you up. Because a lot of people are listening to the same playlist, so then they're either copying them or they're seeing like, okay, like Tech House 2020 added this track, and then they move it over, right? So then from there, a track starts growing, right? And we know that because it's getting added to this playlist first, and then it keeps getting added to more and more playlists, right? It's actually interesting to. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Go.
Third-party playlists or editorial playlists or both that you're monitoring as those taste makeup playlists?
It's both. So editorial actually is like. Oh, thanks for coming closer. It's great. It's our intimate workshop here. It's great. We monitor all types of playlists. So the thing is that what we see is that if you get added to an editorial playlist, everyone's always like hyping up the editorial playlist. Editorial only means that you're on that playlist for 1 week, usually. Like you pitch it, you gotta pitch it like 2 weeks or earlier, and then you if you're lucky, you end up on one. And that's cool. That's more like a status symbol. I'm on that, and that's nice. But what's really important is that the track gets picked up by more and more other playlists. And Spotify actually recently gave a little bit more insights on how the algorithm works more publicly. They establish like profiles of which tracks your song is placed with a lot. And they do that by looking at playlists. So for example, if I'm a listener and I curate my own listener playlist and I throw in a bunch of songs now that I really like, Spotify's algorithm now learns like, okay, cool, like this track is always getting played with these other 5 tracks. So then let's say a listener is listening to one of these other tracks, then suddenly your track might come up next in either the release radar or the personalized playlist, or even like if it's just auto shuffle, right? So the more information the algorithm gets, especially within like the first week of a release, that's the most important. So of course an editorial playlist gives it a little bit of a boost, but ultimately the most streams you will definitely see straight from the algorithm. Editorial playlists, and then just like basically the algorithm just pushing your music. So that's why these playlist journeys is kind of interesting, because which ones are the plays that you should land on at the beginning? Because if you land on these, then that means kind of like you have a big journey ahead of you. And then usually these personalized playlists will keep pushing you. And that ultimately results in the most streams, right?
It's interesting because my latest single was added for the first time to the editorial playlist on Spotify, which was wicked. I gave you a lot of numbers. It stayed there like for maybe almost 2 months or like 6 weeks. It's still in there. So is it normal that it would usually only stay there for one week?
It really depends on the playlist, but if it does well, they measure all these things. And especially if it's so, Spotify actually calls personalized playlists internally, they call them algotorial. So it's a mix of algorithmic and editorial. They curate a couple of the songs and then the rest is done by the algorithm. So like what could happen is that yours at the beginning is editorially placed, and then later it's actually the algorithm deciding like, actually this track is doing well, I'll keep it in, right? It's kind of an interesting concept, but it's working really well because ultimately what Spotify wants to achieve is retention. It's the same thing that like, and that's also how you basically get paid, is like the longer people listen and the more watch time, for example, on YouTube you have, the better, right? That's all that the algorithm cares about, is like how long do people listen to your song, right? Now, it would be really interesting to do something similar with radio, knowing like which ones are the tastemaker stations, which ones are the stations, for example, that the bigger stations later like are like, oh wow, like because I think everyone here knows when you turn on radio, at least like in the car, like oftentimes you hear the same songs on all the stations, right? And probably they started somewhere, and then like these songs, like obviously the radio hits, they get into your head, but you hear them once, you hear them twice. And then the other radio stations hear it and they're like, oh yeah, this is a cool song. And then suddenly it comes everywhere, right? Like sometimes I don't even understand why a Calvin Harris track is so special when I hear it the first time. Then you hear it 10 more times and suddenly like you're singing along and you're like, what the hell happened? Like I didn't even understand why this track was good, and now it's like in everyone's head, right? And it's happening because like repetition, right? So I guess with radio it would be interesting as well to see. And I guess you could see it with Warm when you're reporting, which stations it gets in first, and then which ones it develops more. I don't know if you would be interested in doing like something like radio journeys, but we are looking into it with Songstats now.
Yeah, that would be super interesting, because I think there's definitely these trigger channels or playlists that triggers other stuff. And I think the interconnectivity, as you mentioned, is also worth to think about something like Shazam, for example, because I would assume that most people that use Shazam would do it because they listen to a song in a store or in the radio. It's probably not Spotify because they wouldn't need it. So there is some kind of circle of life here. I would argue that you release a song, it's on Spotify, it ends up on radio, people start recognizing it through Shazam, which goes back again to streaming and increases the streams. People add it to this playlist, and I think there is probably quite a lot of loops in this way. So I think it's quite important to think about, you know, not necessarily one format over the other, but see how you can use it across the board, so to speak.
Has any of you used SubmitHub or a platform to push to plug?
Or Groover.
The same?
Groover. Marcus, take care.
Marcus, thank you.
Good to see you.
See you.
Yeah, Groover and SubmitHub is good examples of radio plugging, not made by radio pluggers, as an alternative.
So did everyone use a platform like this before to pitch? Yeah? You use it primarily for radio?
Yeah, I use it also for PR generally.
Okay, yeah. You use it for your songs, but for blogs, for playlists, for radio as well, or?
So I do mainly third-party playlists, but I'm on there as a curator myself too. So I
With your own playlists, or? Okay, got it.
And sometimes I do blogs just to get some credibility for the release, because we know that Spotify sometimes tracks those backlinks. But yeah, mainly just third-party playlists.
Okay.
Same, basically, like.
But you don't plug to radio, only blogs and playlists?
Not really, but that might be one of those things, because, okay, let's plug it on SubmitHub, and as a user, it always seems like, okay, it's getting played in, in some college radio somewhere in Norway or something, and then I don't even know if it got played.
So you basically don't see the value in it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we're unsure about it, so you never really know. So since you can't really see the direct outcome of that radio stream, for example, that gets played on, Airplay once, it's just not that immediate like Spotify playlist where everyone is watching how many streams does the track have. And I totally get that, you have to work the release up. You would have to start with the small radio stations, but I mean, radio plugger is a job in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, but this was also why I mentioned this point, that you can also turn it a little bit around, like you can see the song I'm releasing here, what is this leaning towards? Like, is there songs that have 10 million streams in this sense, and you can basically monitor those songs and see, oh, okay, so this is Ibiza Global Underground, Sunshine Live, Studio Brussels, Rins, whatever, and then you will see what radios is more likely to adapt this genre, this music.
That was one question I had. We can use one to monitor the plays. I could potentially look into other tracks and where they would have been played, but can I also sort the radio stations by size, so I don't have to sift through 500 major big radio stations that I, as let's say you're a small artist, you wouldn't be able to attain those. So the ability to sort those and to say, okay, let's start small and do the first, let's plug it to the first 25 small radio stations. That would be a great functionality.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have that filter option at the moment, but I think it's very good feedback. The challenges here is like, how do you weigh? Like, it's also like, a big radio. What is a big radio? I mean, compared to where? I mean, a big radio in Denmark has 200,000 listeners monthly. I don't know if it's a big radio. I mean, if Sunshine Live has 1.5 million, so, and that's a niche. So it's just very difficult to figure out like what is big and small, and also where is the value, because again, of course, if you can see the size, but the next would be what is the audience? How, and you can find these numbers, and we should do that. But again, like, there's one website publishing it for UK radio, there's one website for German radios, and we monitor radios in 200 countries. So if we should do something like this in a global sense, it will take some time, but it's definitely possible if you have the manpower. But again, like as I mentioned before, if you, for example, use this secondary artist and see what radios play that is already your filter possibly. So you have some place to go, and of course also the more you use it and lean into it, you also understand suddenly, okay, Sunshine Live is actually a quite big radio, because if you just saw Sunshine Live and you never heard about it, maybe you would think it's a random radio in Germany, but it's not, but if you're from France, you might not know that. So there are some challenges here, and it's also obviously because everything is individual, right? So, you have to look into a lot of different broadcasts across many different countries and different settings, whereas obviously other formats is on one platform alone. In my space, we also have radios that closes and new ones opens, and sometimes some gets bought by another company, and then they change their name and so on. So it's like we will never end up with 100% of anything, so to speak.
I guess my question is like, okay, let's say you're Songstats users, yeah. Let's say there was radio data available to you, right within Songstats, right? So would you have a look at it? How would it have to be filtered for you to take good advantage of it, right? Or would you sign up for Warm, for example, to see kind of like more in-depth reports, etc., right? Like, would it be useful for you? Would you pay for it, for example? Like, is it like, what's the value for you to see radio data, I guess?
Okay. I mean, you can bring it to a new audience. Because, if I see like that my track is being played in France on certain house music radio, I will maybe, try to put a connection with them, and maybe like not release, I will just send it directly. Hey, I've seen like you played one of my tracks. Thanks for that. Maybe we might make the same vibe. Here's my new release. Sort of try to build connection there.
how to you build relationships, right? And
When someone like suppose my track, I will usually jump on it. Okay, thanks for this. Try to look for connection, and next time the door is sort of open, so we can get in.
So it sounds to me like the problem of like this black box of radio
it's filter.
Yeah, it lies within. It lies within. Like you can quantify the impact of a Spotify playlist by looking at Spotify for Artists, by looking at songs, at seeing the stream, seeing it in there, having proof. Right now, Warm gives you proof that you got played on radio, but it currently holds no value to you because you don't see how that then impacts most likely your wallet. You don't see the connection with the stream. You have an idea. Okay, I see the report in the end, maybe from the DSP. It brings me money. It brings me exposure. And with the radio, it's more like, okay, there's some Norwegian radio, and I don't care. So why would I go make the effort, plug to them? So it's kind of interesting because you work under the presumption like, okay, the radio doesn't help, right? It doesn't help my career. It doesn't help me. So why would I do it, right? Now, for you, it's a different approach because you work on like a bigger track and you see the value because these people are getting the exposure that they want. Is that right?
They get paid every time that you are plugged in the radio. They get paid, so it's really good to be plugged on radios.
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's the case that radio doesn't help your career. I just think it's very, 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 very hard to just start opening that black box. Because if I visit Warm and check out another track, I might have 100 radio stations I've never heard of, and then I'll just stress close the website again and think, Jesus Christ, where should I start? So that might be.
Okay, so let's say, easy calculation here. Right now you see 100 stations, you have no context over whatsoever. Let's say you were now to see, okay, these 100 stations, for each of the stations, how many monthly listeners they on average have.
I mean, that would be
A good starting point.
Indicator, yeah.
Because you can actually quantify how big the station is. Now the next thing is, you could also calculate, for example, your airtime, because Warm knows how long you got played, how long you were on there.
How many plays, for example?
How many plays there were. So you can actually then quantify like how many listeners probably were on there, right? But you would want the platform to do that for you, right? Like you wouldn't want to sit there and want to calculate it all, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to start off the whole subject of doing the radio playing, because if I would use Warm, I would, take a reference track that is somewhat similar, but a little bit more, more famous than my track already. I would go on the platform, look for that track, and just check out where that track got played. And as I said, I would love to have some sorting where I can say, okay, let's start with the small stations and just approach the first 10, 50, 20.
Yeah.
Just see what happens, and then move on to the next ones. But to me, and I don't really have an idea about radio at all. Yeah, it's a complete black box. To me, I feel like, as I said, if I open up the website and I see a bunch of radio stations, I don't really have a quality score. I don't know how many listeners they have. I don't even bother.
Yeah.
I just take some more time to get more third-party playlists on Spotify, to be quite honest with you, because I do see the value in radio. I do see the money in radio, definitely. But the industry now is very concentrated on streams. People go on Spotify, how many monthly listeners does the artist have? So if I don't have the insight right away or some indication of what I should go for, I just probably take some more time and go for third-party playlists on Spotify.
Agreed.
And I do see the value in radio. I just don't bother with it.
I understand. I think it's a really good point, and it's also like, what is the value? Like, when you and like, how much does it actually pay, right? What is and where is the value? Because I would argue for a lot of maybe upcoming artists or labels, then the monetization as per se, whether you get that from publishing or neighboring rights, might not be that interesting. Maybe the real value is knowing where to target. So whether that's on social media, or whether that's blogs, or whether that's language, or whatever it is, whereas the monetization, as per se, it comes first and foremost a lot later, right? So you have to make sure that, so let's say you're played on BBC Two, I believe that's the biggest one in the UK. I believe it pays something around £50 per minute or something. It's like serious money, but
We just got that in 2 years. So
right.
we talked about this today. I mean, we get radio streams from last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
We get this GEMA segment.
Exactly.
It takes forever.
Yeah,
So
but if
I do a campaign now, I won't really see, except for the numbers, I won't really see the outcome.
I know, and unfortunately, that's how societies work, and there's always room for improvement, and they talk about a lot about improvement, but it goes very slow. So one of the a coming product that we are building is a royalty calculator on publishing side, 100% split. So basically, we're using the actual minute rates and tariffs from specific radios in specific countries, and we actually already made this. I haven't pushed the button. We haven't developed in the platform, but we made it as a proof of concept. The challenge in this is that the societies in each country are not really transparent with this. So in Denmark, you can go and see what the tariffs are, and that's quite transparent. But in Denmark, there's only tariffs or minute values on 20% of the radios, which is obviously the biggest ones. And in Denmark, that's probably one of the best places in this space. So you can say maybe in France with SACEM, maybe it's only 10% of the radios. In the UK, it's probably also around 10-15%. So the problem here is that there are a lot of radios that actually pays to the societies, but the money is not distributed based on actual playtime. So it's only the top of the most important radios that actually has a minute value or tariff, and the smallest tariff in Denmark is like 0.00 something euro cent, and the biggest per minute, and the biggest is something like 5-6 euro per minute in Denmark. But the point with this was that if we can build a system, now we did it with 8 societies, so we basically manually went through members of the different societies to retrieve these rates and tariffs, and we can implement them to the exact same databases. But the problem is also that these societies change their rates. So in the UK, they change their rates once a month. And in France, I can't remember if it's per quarter or yearly, but in Denmark it's per yearly. So it is extremely difficult to do on a, for example, a global scale. So there's a lot of challenges in this space, and that's also why on a short term I find that the value for a lot of artists or labels for that matter is the fact that they know instantly, so they can use that information to build connections with the radios, interviews, showcases. If they can see that there's 5 radios in Paris that plays our music, and we also see a certain engagement from French people in Spotify or whatever, then maybe it's worthwhile to try and book a gig there. And if you can contact the venues there, you also have the evidence, these achievements we talked about before from the local radios and Spotify or whatever. And then you have like suddenly something to provide in order to get your revenue streams to come from other sources. So my approach is to use radio as a tool. You can compare with other stats and information for you to use it to build a career or use it for purposes where you can get more money, basically, because you have to wait a very long time in most cases, and especially if it's international. So if it's GEMA who needs to collect for SACEM, it's going to take a lot longer time.
You have a question?
Yeah, I have to leave, but I just want to. So about the charts that we talked about it.
Yeah.
Would it be possible with more?
Yeah, I mean, we have been looking into it a lot. but it's yeah, okay. I mean, I can't make it for tomorrow, but it's.
I mean, if you can do it, that would be amazing.
Yeah, but I mean, we have been working on this for quite some time, and I think it's something that will happen. I mean, we actually did do charts, like normal charts, like country based, and but we closed them because it's not really like, I don't think we need more charts to show Ed Sheeran is number one. Like what we need to show is niche genres.
Exactly.
So
Electronic music charts.
exactly, or rock chart, or jazz chart, or whatever it is.
Whatever.
Because the problem here is that the niches are competing against commercial artists on commercial charts in each country.
So let's say you wanted to do a chart, right? What do you care about? You care about the top 20 stations and the electronic tracks that they play, and then what's played the most in those 20 stations, electronic-wise. So what's the chart?
No, I would say like yeah. So let's say that like the biggest like radio, electronic radio, like how much? Yeah, like the first, let's say the first 100 music that are mostly played in the
In the top 20 stations in France?
yeah, kind of, yeah.
But when you like top like just from the biggest radios, or more like only from.
Generally, it would be amazing, like in all the electronic radio, like who is played the most, and because it would be like something that I could give to my clients too.
Yeah, another achievement.
In Germany, they do that. We see like in dance charts and we see the ranking and stuff. I would like to have the same.
But, okay, question. If you have, let's say there's a 500 stations in France that play electronic music. There's 20 that are really big. And then there's 480 which are small. Does each spin count the same for the chart? No, I'm asking you, would you want it to count the same, or? Because that would give some power to the smaller stations.
Yeah, or you could just say that it's only these 20 stations that is important. And this is like, I think it's a really good question, because this is like the challenges we're facing also as a technology company. I don't want to be the one who decides if it should be this approach or this approach or this approach or this approach. I rather want to build what most people think is most useful. But I don't know, for example, if you had an electronic chart from radio in France, if it's, should be across, electronic music being broadcast on all French radios, or if it should be, only from these 20 or 500 electronic radios.
If it's electronic, it should be only electronic radios.
Okay.
That's like, yeah, I see.
So it wouldn't count if like a big station, non-electronic, plays an electronic track?
For the electronic, the
Chart.
dance charts, no. But I would see it with my APN or with more. So that is fine.
Okay.
But if I want electronic, I want to see electronic.
Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense. Is there any other questions? You're very welcome. You're very welcome. Is there any other questions, or we probably have covered everything?
Well, we have a new guest here. Welcome.
Oh shit! Welcome
ladies.
to the.
This is our intimate workshop with 2 new guests.
Oh, that's.
Okay, introduce yourself. Are you an artist? What data do you use?
DJ and producer.
Yeah.
Israel, actually.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
I'm 23. Yeah, making tech, house techno, house music.
Do you monitor like music data in general on Spotify, etc., and then B, like, do you use song stats or radio stats?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Warm.
Yeah.
You use both platforms?
Yeah. Sorry, again.
Do you use Oscar represents a platform called Songstats, and I'm here with the platform called Warm. Do you use either of the platforms? No.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Makes sense.
Do you use anything to get data of your music usage?
I do use Feature FM, if you're familiar with that. It's
No.
like through links, I can see how many clicks and views from which app or which site they came in and see my music.
Mm-hmm.
And besides that, no.
But okay, are you using Spotify for artists?
Yeah, also that, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you're coming a little bit late. So yeah, I guess we were talking about the value of data, of radio data, and also why why you should be monitoring kind of all of this. Warm is essentially a dashboard where you can see all of your global radio streams. Songstats collects all the data from all of your streaming services, etc. So yeah, I guess
That's probably what we need to round off with. Yeah, but I mean, just to round off, I would also say if you end up spending money, for example, on a radio promoter, if you can afford that, you've reached a certain level of that, it might be worth spending not so much money as you spend on the promoter to actually control their work. And now that the promoter left, she can't really say anything. But it's more like a general thing. Like you can easily spend, 2, 3, 4, 5,000 euro on a campaign for radio promotion. So it could make sense to use a tool to actually audit what the results is, and then you can use it for your collection purposes and general market intelligence, booking, etc. on top of that, and of course use it to compare with the other data sources like Songstats, 1001 track list, etc.
Yeah, I guess to recap, radio data is a bit of a black box, or radio in general is a little bit of a black box. It's hard to quantify like what a stream or a spin on radio actually means and what it means to you and your career, and of course to your streams and also to your income streams. And then the second, I guess there's ways to potentially measure it across Songstats and Warm, seeing like, okay, it's getting picked up, there's maybe more Shazams out of the sudden, maybe that results in more streams, but it's really hard to like actually quantify that. And then the other problem that we talked about is that it just takes a long time to actually see the money from all of this. So even though you invest into a campaign, if you have a life cycle of 2 years to see anything back, that's a long iteration process to change something. And if you want to invest 3 to 5K, I guess the major labels, they have the budgets to do it, and they know they're going to get played, and then they know that that's going to get their money back across maybe not just radio, but also the other platforms. But yeah, it's a little bit of like a hard step in. So I completely understand as an artist myself as well that plugging to playlists and to creators and stuff is the more quantifiable way. And also since this journey traditionally now starts at the streaming services anyway, then the radio stations will pick that stuff up, which is trending on radio, right? So there's always an argument to be made, like, do I want to invest in radio? Is it really worth it? I think to keep an eye on it and to see that there's traction is helpful, and to see like, okay, there's a trend here, or there's an audience growing in a certain market, that can be really helpful, either for touring, maybe to like invest in that market a little bit more. To do it for the actual money, I think you need either a hit that you think like, okay, it's gonna do well, and where like putting some money behind it to push it further where that makes sense. But otherwise, keeping an eye on it, seeing that there is some momentum, and quantifying that in some way by either audience size or listenership, I think can be really helpful to get a little bit better sense as well to where people are listening to your music. Yeah.
And where to focus your energy, because that's the main point. Okay, but thank you so much for participating in the Intimacy Workshop 2023. Thank you.
Thank you.